Above the city of Cusco, on the highest point of a windswept hill, there is a wall built from stones that should not have been movable by hand. Some weigh more than a loaded jumbo jet. They are cut into odd, interlocking shapes, fitted together without a trace of mortar, so precisely that even today you cannot slide a knife blade between two of them. The Spanish who first saw this wall in the 16th century did not believe human beings had built it. Some of them said so in writing on the record. This is Archive of the Ancients, and today we're looking at Sacsayhuaman, a citadel the Inca built above their capital, and one of the last great engineering puzzles from the ancient world that we can actually document, because the men who tore parts of it down left behind detailed written accounts of what they saw. According to Inca oral history recorded by Spanish chroniclers, the Emperor Pachacuti once described Cusco as being shaped like a lion. The tail was where two rivers met. The body was the great central square and the houses around it. But the lion had no head, so Pachacuti ordered one built, a fortress on the high plateau north of the city, powerful enough to serve as the capital's crown and its final line of defense. Construction stretched across the reigns of three emperors, Pachacuti, his son Topa Inca Yupanqui, and his grandson Huayna Capac. The chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon, who interviewed people who had witnessed the work, wrote that the project required 20,000 men supplied by the provinces. 4,000 quarried and shaped the stone. 6,000 hauled it using massive cables made of leather and cabuya fiber. The rest cleared ground, dug foundations, and prepared timber. Workers rotated through limited shifts. If someone fell ill, another laborer took his place until he recovered. It was, by any measure, one of the largest coordinated labor projects in the pre-industrial Americas. And yet, by Cieza de Leon's own account, the workers had remarkably few tools. No iron, no wheels, no draft animals capable of hauling multi-ton loads, just stone hammers, ropes, timber, and an almost unbelievable amount of patience. He describes stones 12 feet wide and more than 20 feet long, packed so tightly that a coin could not be wedged into the seams. One stone near the site was so large that, according to local informants he spoke with, it had simply been left where it was quarried, because moving it any further proved impossible. Cieza de Leon wrote that he would not have believed a stone that size could be transported by human strength alone had he not seen with his own eyes that it had already been cut and shaped for the wall. The best preserved section of Sacsayhuaman consists of three massive terrace walls zigzagging along the hillside for roughly 400 meters, standing about 6 meters high. Archaeologists estimate the site contains more than 6,000 cubic meters of stone. Some of the largest limestone blocks are estimated to weigh between 128 and nearly 200 tons, quarried by some estimates from sources over 20 miles away. The precision is what still draws engineers back. The blocks aren't simple rectangles. They interlock in irregular, almost puzzle piece shapes, with rounded corners and walls that lean slightly inward as they rise. That combination isn't decorative. It's structural. Modern seismologists believe this exact design, interlocking stones, inward-leaning walls, rounded edges that let force redistribute rather than crack, is a large part of why Sacsayhuaman's Inca walls have survived earthquakes that have repeatedly destroyed colonial Spanish buildings standing just a few hundred meters away.
Modern researchers have tried to reverse engineer exactly how it was done. One theory, proposed by architect and explorer Vince Lee, suggests the Inca carved each stone's joints in advance, built earthen ramps, hauled the block into position on a stack of logs, and then removed the logs one at a time to lower it precisely into its socket. Small-scale experiments using this method achieved partial success but never matched Inca-level precision. Separate experiments near the nearby site of Ollantaytambo tried to tow multi-ton stones down a slope using ropes and manpower. In one attempt, a team lost control of a 1-ton block, which rolled downhill on its own, a sobering demonstration of how dangerous the real process must have been. In another, roughly 100 people pulling ropes, with a dozen more pushing from behind, successfully towed a stone that may have weighed close to 10 tons. It worked. It also made clear just how much coordinated manpower, not machinery, was the real technology behind these walls. Sacsayhuaman was never purely military. Cieza de Leon recorded that the local population called it the House of the Sun, and its great plaza was large enough to hold thousands of people at once for communal ceremonies. Pizarro described underground chambers said to be even more finely built than the walls above ground, chambers that, according to Inca informants, had never been fully explored even in their own time. In 2008, archaeologists uncovered an entirely new set of ruins on the periphery of the site, structures that appear ceremonial in nature, but whose exact purpose is still unknown. Even after nearly 5 centuries of study, Sacsayhuaman is still quietly revealing pieces of itself. When the Spanish arrived, they immediately understood what they were looking at. Pedro Pizarro described a fort with 2 towering round towers, storerooms packed with lances, clubs, shields, and armor, and walls he considered strong enough to resist any weapon Europe could bring against them. During the Spanish siege of Cusco in 1536, Inca forces used Sacsayhuaman itself as a stronghold against the invaders, a battle so fierce that Spanish accounts describe it as one of the most desperate fights of the entire conquest. What the Spanish couldn't conquer through force, they eventually erased through convenience. In the years after the conquest, colonists realized it was far cheaper to quarry pre-cut Inca stone than to shape their own. Sacsayhuaman was demolished block by block. The chronicler Garcilaso de la Vega wrote bluntly that the Spanish tore down smooth, finished Inca masonry simply to avoid the cost and delay of cutting new stone, and that there was scarcely a house in colonial Cusco that hadn't been built, at least partly, from Sacsayhuaman's bones. Only the stones too massive to move with colonial-era means survived where they stood. Cieza de Leon himself criticized this destruction, arguing the site should have been preserved as a monument to Inca greatness rather than looted for building material. So the mystery of Sacsayhuaman was never really about who built it, or whether it was humanly possible. Spanish eyewitnesses watched Inca engineers do it, wrote down the head counts, described the tools, and still walked away struggling to believe what they'd seen. The real mystery is narrower, and in its own way more haunting. Exactly how a civilization with no iron, no wheel, and no written blueprints achieved a level of precision that modern engineers with cranes and steel still cannot fully replicate. Every failed reconstruction experiment isn't evidence the Inca had help from outside history.
It's evidence of exactly how much skill history quietly erased when it let those walls be dismantled for spare parts. The site never fully stopped being sacred either. Every June, thousands of Peruvians gather at Sacsayhuaman to reenact Inti Raymi, the ancient Inca festival of the sun, on the same ground where Pachacuti's masons once quarried and fitted a mountain into a wall. In 1983, UNESCO listed Cusco and Sacsayhuaman together as a World Heritage Site, formally recognizing what Cieza de Leon had argued for 400 years earlier, that the fortress deserved protection, not demolition. What do you think the real secret was? Lost engineering knowledge? Sheer scale of manpower? Or something about these stones we still haven't figured out? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories of ancient mysteries still waiting to be solved, subscribe to Archive of the Ancients.